the 21st of June. We now move to the next bill.
Dogs Protection of Livestock Amendment Bill, second reading.
I call Dr. Thérèse Coffey.
I beg to move that the bill be now read a second time. I apologise to the House, but my vocal cords will only support a short speech, and I will need to decline interventions. Livestock worrying is an issue of significant concern for farmers and rural communities, providing much distress and cost for animals and farmers. Livestock worrying is already an offence through the 1953 Act, but the police had sought greater powers to be able to more effectively detect and enable prosecution for such offences. The bill provides for inclusion of attacks as well as worrying as offences. It extends the area covered to beyond the land to a road or path, and that is to address attacks where livestock are moved to different parts of the farm. The bill provides for powers of entry and search through a warrant, and it allows the dogs to be detained to try and avoid further attacks while an owner is waiting trial for such an offence. It allows for more modern ways to gather evidence from a dog, including taking dental impressions and other relevant samples. It updates the fines that can be imposed, and this bill will include camelids, alpacas and llamas in the definition of livestock for the purposes of the 1953 Act. In keeping this speech short, I'm conscious I've not been able to answer several of the questions that people inside and outside of this House may have on why this or that specific issue is not covered in this bill, or at least not yet. I know that the Minister has a good briefing pack and may cover some of those points. However, I do want to thank various groups, including the NFU, for their support of this bill. When Cap Daniel's bill was set aside and the Government explained at the time why it was, I pledged to the House that the Government would support our manifesto commitments in that bill to be enacted through single-issue bills. That is now happening, including through this bill. Mr Deputy Speaker, we do want to see an effective deterrent to this kind of harm to livestock. I believe this bill will achieve that. I certainly hope to speak to it more in committee, and so I commend this bill to the House.
The question is the bill be now read a second time. Mr Dunne.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I congratulate my right honourable friend for her perseverance, not only in presenting this bill, which I know she was interested in when she was Secretary of State, but also in managing to get here and deliver her speech today, despite her affliction. I will speak very briefly, and I should declare my entry in the register as a farmer, including of livestock, and as a dog owner, and one of my dogs has had occasion to chase animals, chasing deer, which are not categorised as livestock, I don't think, in the bill, in woods, which can be a cause of considerable distress when she doesn't return, despite our entreaties. And I really rise on behalf of farmers in the country, but in particular in Shropshire, in my constituency. We have a quarter of all sheep produced across the UK. It comes from within an hour of Craven Arms in the centre of my constituency. So there are a great many livestock farmers, and in particular sheep producers along the Welsh borders, as the House will appreciate. And this measure is directed in considerable part at them because of unfortunate incidents which the NFU Mutual, the insurance arm of the National Farmers Union, of which I am a member and they are my insurer, have done a survey of their members which estimate that the cost of dog attacks on farm animals is at £1.8 million in 2022. This is a real and present issue for livestock farmers, in particular at the time of the spring that we're about to enter, when sheep are lambing, and it can lead, in particular when sheep are on the point of lambing. So if pregnant ewes get chased, it can lead to abortion and loss of the lamb that they've carried for months. So this is not only impacting on farm incomes, it impacts on health and well-being of the livestock managers themselves if they have to deal with dangerous dogs causing trouble to their livestock. I would urge, if this bill is able to proceed to a committee stage, that some consideration is given not just to the requirement to keep dogs on a lead in open fields, but also in open common land. There are many commons along the Welsh borders in my constituency, most of which are grazed by sheep, and it's important that people, if there are sheep present, keep their dogs on a lead on a common, which is not the normal practice in many of the commons that I visited locally. So I think that's something that might need to be looked at in committee. I'm very conscious that this is going to be a short debate, and I'd just like to conclude by assuring the Minister that the bill has my support.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's a great pleasure to speak in this debate brought by my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, and I'm fully in support of her bill. As you will know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the right honourable member for Suffolk Coastal is well known in this House as being the main organiser of karaoke sessions, and I know that if her voice was in full throttle today, she would have made her case with all the gusto with which she belts out songs at those karaoke evenings. But alas, we'll have to wait for another day for that from my right honourable friend. This is an important bill, and I personally in my time in Parliament have been involved both with amendments to the Dangerous Dogs Act and then more recently with my own private member's bill on hare coursing. And so I would make this point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this bill gets to the fact, which is this is not really about the dogs, it's about the owners of the dogs, it's the possession of the dogs, it's about trying to improve the behaviour of the owners of dogs. And in that respect, and I hope you will allow me just a point of, well, sort of levity, it's kind of serious, but I did notice, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that my honourable friend, the member for Ynys is about to rise and make a comment. I fear that this will include a story from about her own dog, Violet, a lovely Cocker Spaniel, and therefore I feel I need to own up a little bit to the House about this. It was one of those days, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when backbenchers were asked to go canvassing in a by-election. Obviously, the Conservatives looking forward to a resounding victory in the by-election. And we went off, and I was joined in a small group of Conservative backbenchers by my honourable friend for Ynys and some others. And we were going canvassing, knocking door to door. And of course, somebody had to hold the cards and mark down the voting intentions of people. My honourable friend decided that she would do that, and she entrusted to me the safe custody of her dog, her lovely dog Violet, and entrusted and asked me to go to door number 1 and meet the family at door number 1. I went to the door of number 1 on that particular street and immediately heard barking sounds from inside. I took Violet and I moved her to behind me, and the lady answered the door and said, "Don't worry, he's on a leash." A few seconds later, her husband left with a dog. It was the dog that was on the leash, and went out to one side, my eyes carefully following the dog, Violet protected behind me. And it was only when the gentleman got into his car that another dog came out and attacked poor Violet. So you can imagine my honourable friend's feelings barely 3 minutes after she had entrusted me with the dog, when I was running down the street with Violet in my hands, with blood rushing from her neck. My point of this, and is not only to put on record my apologies to my honourable friend, the member for Ynys, and I'm sure our honourable friend, the member for Wild Forest, will be laughing at this because he was there too, is that control of animals, whatever the circumstances, is a risky business. Control of dogs is a risky business with the best of behaviour. But what this bill seeks to do is to try and ensure that that behaviour is kept to the highest standard. And importantly, to bring up to standard some of the issues and powers that the police have won. One of the issues the police need to enforce the law. One of the issues with respect to the hare coursing bill was that the police did not feel that they had the appropriate measures, and in particular, the ability to seize and detain dogs. In those instances, the dogs doing hare coursing were, of course, those animals that were being gambled upon, therefore were valuable to the owner. But in all cases, it is the ability of the police to take away the dog, to charge the kenneling of the dog, which has a deterrent effect. And I'm very pleased to see those particular provisions in this bill. I'm also pleased, perhaps unusually, to see Section 4 of this bill, which gives powers of entry for adjusted police to allow the police authorise entry and search. And the reason for that, and there was a survey done, I think, by the National Sheep Association, which talked about how many times animals have been worried or attacked. I think 70% of the people in that survey reported they had. But in only 14%, barely 1 in 10, did the owner of the dog alert the owner of the livestock to the crime. So this is something that either people don't feel has occurred or don't think it's important enough, and therefore a lot of the evidence and information will be taken away. And therefore, in these circumstances, it really is crucial that the provisions in Section 4 of this bill are put into law. So I very much welcome this bill, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I again congratulate and commend my honourable friend for moving forward. This is a live issue still. I mean, I was at a constituency surgery just on last Friday. It didn't involve livestock, but certainly did involve dogs out of control, worrying local people, worrying local citizenry, worrying about the attacks. In fact, one of my constituents' own dog had just been ripped to pieces by dogs that were out loose. And so for the sake of my constituents in Moggahanger, for those who have pressed in the past about issues to do with dangerous dogs in towns and in villages, for those who have suffered from hair coursing on their properties, and now for farmers who want to look after their livestock, I fully commend this bill to the House.
Well, I think we're all awaiting the update on Violet now. Virginia Crosbie.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I would like to start by congratulating Llangefni, my right honourable friend, for bringing this important bill forward. Now, one of the first things I did as the new MP in 2020 was to meet with local farmers like Brian Bown, Kelvin Furlong and Peter Williams in the Taverna Ross in Rostrehoover. And they were concerned about livestock worrying. And to ensure my farmers' voices were heard in Westminster, I undertook a journey to take action on their behalf. I visited farmers like Tecwyn Jones at his farm in Bedfordshire and Gareth Hughes at Clertheog Farm in Valley. Now, Tecwyn lost 7 pregnant ewes and 3 rams in an attack by an unknown dog or dogs described by police as brutal and horrendous. I held meetings with Rob Taylor and Dave Allen from the North Wales Rural Crime Team, and the NFU County Advisor, Iestyn Pritchard, the National Trust and DEFRA officers, who I'd like to thank, to understand how the existing legislation is failing and what would be required to protect farmers and promote responsible dog ownership in future. For my honest small farmers, I'm delighted that my name is on this important bill and as co-sponsor of the bill. However, credit should go to them for raising this important issue. My farmers made it clear to me that the legislation currently covering livestock worrying, the Dogs Protection of Livestock Act 1953, is outdated and no longer fit for purpose. And this is hardly surprising, given that it's barely been touched for over 70 years. It's not kept pace with dog ownership, leisure trends, DNA technology, or indeed modern farming practice. Now, working together, we developed a 10-minute rule bill to amend the existing Dogs Protection of Livestock Act, which laid before Parliament in July 2021, to give the police powers to seize a dog or other items and to take DNA samples where they have reasonable grounds for suspicion that the dog has worried livestock, to provide a clearer and tighter definition of the phrase close control, making it a legal requirement that dogs must be on a lead when they are near livestock of any kind, and remove the maximum £1,000 fine so that irresponsible dog owners realise the full financial impact of their actions. The proposals in my bill were subsequently put forward for incorporation into the proposed Kept Animals Bill. However, in May 2023, the UK government announced to get important legislation through Parliament, the Kept Animals Bill would be taken forward instead as a series of single-issue bills. Like many, I was disappointed that the passage of the Kept Animals Bill was stopped. However, I'm reassured that the government has been true to its word and is putting its proposals through as individual pieces of legislation, as we can see in this very important debate. I'm delighted now that DEFRA is now prioritising livestock worrying and has asked the former Secretary of State to take the changes forward in a private member's bill, the Dogs Protection of Livestock Amendment Bill. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, agriculture has been the backbone of my constituency of Ynys for centuries. At the beginning of the 13th century, the island was known as Mon Mam Cymru, the granary of Wales, and in the 17th century, livestock rearing and dairy farming began to replace arable land, and the systems of hedgerow enclosures still form our landscape today. Many of our farms are still small compared to other parts of Britain, most being between 5 and 100 acres. Subsequently, herds are relatively small, and livestock can feel like members of the family. That's why brutal dog attacks hit my Ynys Môn farmers particularly hard. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about farmer Tecwyn Jones from Bedfordshire. Tecwyn went out one day to tend his sheep and found 7 pregnant ewes and 3 rams dead in his fields. They'd been killed by an unknown dog or dogs in what police described as a brutal and horrendous attack. And when I visited Tecwyn's farm, he told me about the impact the attack had on his business and his well-being. His accounts of the event were harrowing. He shared the awful moment when he found his sheep brutally killed, coming across one dead carcass after another in the pouring rain. These were sheep that he had lovingly reared and cared for. They had clearly suffered horrendously. Tecwyn was visibly upset and shaken when he related the story to me. The dogs that carried out the attack have never been identified. Even if a dog was suspected, the law had no teeth to identify and seize it unless it was found unsupervised at the scene of the assault. For Tecwyn, it's not just the financial loss that hit him, Mr Deputy Speaker. Although that went into thousands of pounds, it was the emotional loss of these prized animals which he'd put his time and devotion into rearing. But Tecwyn is not alone. This is a huge issue for farmers across the UK. Livestock worrying takes place when dogs which are not being kept under proper control attack or chase livestock, in particular sheep. Whilst attacks are not officially recorded, and it's widely accepted that many incidents go unreported, it's estimated that around 15,000 sheep are killed by dogs each year. And over the pandemic, many of us were encouraged to get out into nature, and there was also an increase in dog ownership. This led to an increase in incidents of livestock worrying, which continues to be a problem today. And data from the National Farmers Union, the NFU, indicates that the average insurance claim for attacks is over £1,300, and some claims rise to tens of thousands of pounds. In 2020, the cost to the farming community of livestock worrying was estimated to be around £1.3 million. Now, the government's Animal Welfare Action Plan references the need to keep dangerous dogs legislation effective, and I'm very pleased that this bill picks up many of the changes that I proposed 3 years ago, including giving the police power to seize a dog or other items and to take samples, like dental impressions, where they have reasonable grounds for suspicion that the dog has worried livestock, and putting the financial responsibility on the dog owner rather than the farmer. When dog attacks can cost farmers tens of thousands of pounds, it's only right that the dog owner is made to pay for the damage caused. Now, surveys show that only 40% of dog owners accept that their dog could injure or kill a farm animal, and that 64% of dog owners allow their pets to roam free in the countryside, despite half of them admitting that their dog doesn't always come back when called. Experience shows us that the natural instincts of even the best behaved domestic dog can take over when other animals are in close proximity. Even without physical contact, sheep can die or miscarry as a result of the distress and exhaustion caused by a dog chase. By their very nature, pet owners and farmers almost universally care deeply about animals, and much of the solution to this problem is about raising awareness of the Countryside Code through legislation. It's vital that dog owners who live near or visit land on which livestock is being raised understand that. As a dog owner myself, my Cocker Spaniel Violet sends her regards to the Honourable Member for North East Bedfordshire. I hope that this legislation, alongside an effective communication plan, will serve to educate dog owners. I'd like to end by saying, Mr Deputy Speaker, on behalf of Tecwyn and all those farmers who've suffered financial and emotional loss through dog attacks, I support this excellent bill, and once again I'd like to congratulate my right honourable friend for bringing this important bill forward. Diolch yn fawr.
Shadow Minister Steve Reid.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to congratulate the Right Honourable Member for Suffolk Coastal for introducing this bill. I'm sorry about her throat, and I hope her voice recovers very quickly. Livestock worrying causes havoc for farmers up and down the country. The vast majority of dogs are, of course, much loved and good-natured family pets. but a small minority are not kept under control, allowing them to aggressively chase down, attack, and in some cases kill livestock. Farmers are left to cope with the stress of injury and death caused to their livestock. There is rising concern in the farming community about dog attacks. This week I visited the Alton family farm in Audley, near Newcastle under Lyme. They told me how frequently they had experienced dogs chasing and attacking their livestock, only to be told by the owner that they don't normally behave like that. Another farmer I spoke to told me quite horrifically that someone had deliberately brought and set aggressive XL bully dogs on her sheep, but that the police hadn't considered it serious enough to even turn up to the scene of such an appalling crime. This is quite clearly unacceptable. The NFU's own data has found that attacks on farm animals have cost £1.8 million in the last year alone, as the Honourable Member for Ludlow pointed out. A staggering cost to farmers at a time when they're facing the perfect storm of excessively high energy bills and record high levels of personal taxation. This bill makes important progress in improving police powers to crack down on livestock attacks. It's right to raise the penalties for livestock worrying and make the regulations clearer. But we must also use this opportunity to ensure that we educate responsible owners about better controlling their dogs when they are near livestock. As the Honourable Member for Ynys said, pet owners and farmers care deeply about their animals' welfare, and a big part of the solution to this problem must lie in raising awareness of the Countryside Code. It's vital that dog owners who live near or visit land on which livestock is being raised understand that even without physical contact, sheep can die or miscarry as a result of the distress and exhaustion caused by a dog chase. The RSPCA concludes that most livestock worrying incidents are caused by unaccompanied dogs and, to a lesser degree, dogs being walked by their owners. Responsible dog owners can play a major part in solving this problem by ensuring their dogs are kept on a lead and adequately socialised and trained so their pet does not pose a risk to livestock. Owners must also ensure their property is secure to prevent dogs escaping from their homes and gardens. Farmers and livestock owners can take measures to ensure there is visible signage on fields where livestock are present and to swiftly report any incidents to the local police. And the police, of course, should be expected to respond promptly. This bill is a first step in preventing the harms that dogs can cause to livestock. Labour fully supports this bill and we will look to strengthen it should it reach committee and report stages to ensure that livestock are properly protected.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I congratulate my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, for bringing forward this incredibly important debate. And I also want to thank my honourable friend for Ynys for her tireless commitment as well in terms of meeting with her constituents and also the work that she did through her 10-minute rule bill. And I also think that this builds on the work that my right honourable friend has done in meeting with his constituents in Ludlow, raising their concerns across Shropshire, but also across North East Bedfordshire as well. And it's been good to hear the many contributions that we've had through this debate. When the Animal Welfare Kept Animals Bill was withdrawn in May of last year, ministers committed to delivering the measures in the bill individually. And this bill takes forward key livestock worrying measures from the Kept Animals Bill to amend the Dogs Protection of Livestock Act 1953 to strengthen police powers and extend the location and species in scope of the Act. The UK has the highest welfare score in the G7 according to the World Animal Protection Index and some of the highest animal welfare standards in the world. And I am well aware of the support animal welfare has in this country through the volume of correspondence received by myself and my officials in the department, but also as a constituency MP representing Keighley and Ilkley. That strength of feeling has been apparent again in this debate, and the government will be fully supporting this important livestock worrying bill through Parliament. Animal welfare continues to be a priority for this government, and we have already delivered against a number of commitments to date. We have increased the penalties for those convicted of animal cruelty. We have announced an extension of the Ivory Act to cover 5 more endangered species. We have passed the Animal Welfare Sentience Act and launched a dedicated committee. We have made microchipping compulsory for cats, and having visited Yorkshire Cat Rescue in Keighley, I know how important this issue is. We have successfully banned glue traps. We have introduced new powers for tackling hair coursing, as my honourable friend for North East Bedfordshire so committedly put his ambitions towards achieving that. And we have supported private members' bills to ban the trade of shark fins. We have supported private members' bills to ban the domestic advertising of low animal welfare experiences abroad. We have protected animal welfare service animals through Fins law and banned commercial third-party sales of puppies and kittens. Again, something which all of us in this House have been contacted about via our constituents. And we have modernised our licensing system for activities such as dog breeding and pet sales. And I hope this reassures the House that the government is working hard to take steps in further improving our already high standards on animal welfare. Today's bill builds on the government's ambitious programme of animal welfare reforms, and we are pleased to support it. The government takes the issue of livestock worrying incredibly seriously, recognising the distress that this can cause animals, but also farmers. Livestock worrying can have awful impacts. The behaviour of dogs that chase, attack, or cause distress to livestock can result in injury and even death. There are also wider psychological impacts which can be suffered by livestock as a result of livestock worrying, such as abortion, picked up by my right honourable friend, the member for Ludlow. And these impacts go beyond the animals and their welfare, but also we have to be conscious of the negative implications on health and well-being of our farmers who are so devastatingly impacted by these impacts, and of course the financial loss that they also experience. The bill amends the Dogs Protection of Livestock Act 1953, which underpins livestock worrying offences and enforcement. And since its introduction over 70 years ago, the number of livestock in England and Wales has doubled. Dog ownership has increased by over 20% since 2011 and 2020. And in 2021, a report by the Pet Food Manufacturers Association estimated that 33% of households in the UK now own a dog, which is another reason why this bill now is so important to be brought forward. And an all-party parliamentary group on animal welfare estimated in their 2017 report entitled Tackling Livestock Worrying and Encouraging Responsible Ownership that there are 34,000 instances of livestock worrying per year in England and Wales alone. And of course, there is also additional financial cost, with the National Farmers Union estimating that in 2020 alone, the cost of livestock worrying across the UK rose from 100,000 to 1.3 million. Existing legislation provides a specific offence for allowing a dog to worry livestock with a maximum fine of £1,000. All reported crimes should be taken seriously, investigated and, where appropriate, taken through the courts and met with tough sentences. This bill seeks to reduce instances of livestock worrying and attacking by focusing on 2 key areas. These are expanding the locations and species in scope of the offence and strengthening the police enforcement powers. The bill extends the scope of the 1953 Act by broadening the locations where offence may take place to include roads and paths. This will help protect livestock where they are being moved from one enclosed field to another, such as cows going across the public highway to the milking parlour, or sheep simply being moved from one field to another across the public highway. The bill will also extend the species protected by the Act to include camelids such as llamas and alpacas. The Alpaca Society estimates that there could be as many as 45,000 alpacas owned in England, with a further by their members, but with a further 20,000 owned by non-members. The bill will also improve the ability of the police to enforce by making provision in relation to the powers of entry, seizure and detention of dogs, and the collection of vital evidence such as DNA from blood on a dog's collar. We have engaged extensively with stakeholders, including livestock and the farming sector, animal welfare, police and veterinary sectors on all of these measures. And these measures are vital in tackling the issue of livestock worrying, and we will greatly strengthen the existing legislation to decrease instances of livestock worrying and attacking. The importance, Mr Deputy Speaker, of this bill is evidence from the discussion that we have had today, and I look forward to it proceeding through all stages in the House. And may I conclude by thanking once again my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, for again bringing forward this crucial piece of legislation.
Good Leader of the House, Therese Coffey.
Leader of the House, I want to thank all honourable and right honourable members who've spoken today. We've seen from their constituencies why this update to the legislation is needed. I'd like to thank the government for their support. I'd like to thank the Shadow Secretary of State. It seems the support of His Majesty's opposition, and also to thank the officials and my parliamentary team who've taken it this far. I hope that we can get this through swiftly through the House to make sure that farmers, rural communities and of course the animals themselves, there is that deterrent effect that will be in place, which is much needed.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. As member can say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Dr. Coffey.